Hi, I'm Nate with Average Jack Archery Pro Shop and Range here in Phillipsburg, PA, and today I want to talk about getting a kid into turkey hunting with a bow, but we're not going to use this one. So if you're anything like me, one of your first introductions into hunting was during the spring turkey season. It's warm, it's nice outside, the birds are chirping. You have the ability to have a kid hear a turkey gobble instead of just sitting there freezing, waiting for a deer to show up is a wonderful thing, and it's a great way to get kids involved in the sport. However, hunting turkeys is always difficult, but more importantly, doing it with the youth is even more difficult. And then for me, if you're anything like you, when it came to hunting turkeys, you were introduced with a shotgun. You didn't do any practice shots. Your grandfather, your dad, your uncle, your mom, whomever handed you a gun. You walked into the woods, you put the beads on the turkey for the very first time, and you absolutely blew your brains out shooting a 20 gauge or even worse, a 12 gauge if they were real cruel to you. But in today's day and age, with all the mentored hunting programs and everything else, and sure, there are a lot of firearms in my house, you know, handguns and shotguns and deer rifles and everything else. My kids don't have really an interest in firearms, but they do have an interest in hunting, and particularly my youngest one. Now, she's 7, she's just south of 50 pounds, and sure, she might be able to handle a 410 or a 20 gauge, but she doesn't want to deal with the loud noise, and you know, guns can be kind of scary for kids, and in particular as a parent, taking a kid into the woods with a loaded weapon sometimes, trouncing around the woods, if you're not just going right to a blind, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. So I know I have that experience myself. So one thing that you can definitely introduce a kid to is crossbow hunting for turkeys. Now, there are 2 avenues you can do this. You, of course, can set up a blind, middle of the field, on a field edge, whatever, private land, or you can try to run and gun, which is what I basically have to do on public. 99% of the hunting that I do throughout all my deer and turkey season is on public land. So it's in the hills of Pennsylvania, up the mountains, traversing all the ridges and everything else, and trying to get a bird within shotgun range. But I'm not going to have opportunity with my kid. Like I said, she's 7, she's little. So if we do get on a bird, it's going to be quick, the first thing in the morning. Maybe we find a CRP field or a gas well road, and we set up with a couple of decoys and just see if we can wait one out. But I've decided to get my daughter into it using a crossbow and using a Magnus bullhead, you know, decapitating style broadhead. We'll talk about that in a minute. But one thing that's really unique with crossbows is that there's a litany of different options for you based on your state regulations. So here in Pennsylvania, turkeys are considered a big game animal, like they are across the country. And so we have a minimum regulation of 125 pounds of draw weight or cocking weight on a crossbow. Now, nearly any major manufacturer crossbow, Barnett, 10-point, Wicked Ridge, Killer Instinct is going to have that. But oftentimes they're big, they're compound style crossbows, and they're very heavy. And let's be honest, as a bow shop owner, I see my fair share of compound crossbows break, and the last thing I want to do is have the thing at full draw, it dry fires and knock breaks or something like that, it blows up and injures me or injures my daughter. So one thing that's really nice with a 125-pound minimum is you can find a cheap recurve style crossbow. So this is an SAS Jaguar. You can get this thing off of Amazon for about 170 bucks. And it is legal here in the state of Pennsylvania. It takes a very normal bolt, takes a 16-inch bolt, standard half moon knock that you can find in pretty much any big box store across the country. Now, how I rigged up the bolts is a little bit different, but we'll talk about that in a second. Another nice thing, it does come with iron sights, and if the youth or even yourself, you want to try something like this, works with iron sights, that's great. But I have a True Glow Gobble Stopper red dot sight on here. It's a dot in the center with a nice big ring. So realistically, and I've tested this out to about 20 yards with the Magnus Bullhead, the 100 grain version, if that turkey's head at 20 yards and in is anywhere inside that ring, one of the blades is going to catch him. So she doesn't have to be perfectly, you know, putting the crosshairs on. She gets a little bit of leeway with that circle that goes around the turkey's head, and that makes it aiming for her a lot easier, and that makes me as a dad a little bit less worried, you know, if she gets a straight up miss, which she might do, of course, in the heat of the moment, but it gives us a little bit more leeway. So all in all, this whole package, about 170 and I think about 50 or 60 bucks for this cheap red dot. You're less than $250 into the hole before you get the broadheads. And realistically, if you wanted to, you could probably build up a heavier bolt and actually deer hunt with this with the youth as well, if it's something that would make sense for you and them. Now for this bow, we have two options like I alluded to earlier. We can sit in a blind on a field edge or something like that, or we can run and gun. I have a feeling we're gonna end up kind of running and gunning. Like I said, we don't have much access to private land and the ability to put up a blind and stuff like that. So I've actually practiced with her sitting up against the backside of the house here and putting her in my lap and having her adjust. Now I can hold the front end, but she's gotta do everything else. She's gotta manipulate the sighting, she has to do everything else and be able to take the safety off and actually execute the shot when an animal comes in, when the bird comes in rather. And so with something this nice and lightweight and compact, it's easy for her to do in a running gun. Now we do also have the bog pod, which is that vise clamping system that you can put in a tripod if you're going to shoot out of a blind. It works for firearms too. So if you want to put it in a shotgun to help the recoil, or for deer season with a center fire or something like that, you can use it there as well. But they're expensive. They're super heavy to be lugging around. So we've actually done a fair bit of practicing with her just inside of my lap up against the tree and see if we can actually get her to work, and it has. So I'm no Picasso, but here you have a turkey's neck and head obviously, and here you have the 3 blades of a Magnus bullhead. This was at 20 yards. We're shooting the 100 grain model. You can beef it up to the 125 if you want, but that gives a little bit extra cut and you have to worry about the bolts being controlled. Now this is not a fast crossbow, and this is the other part of shooting a recurve style crossbow. A, the price point, B, the lightweight maneuverability, a lot less parts to break, which I see more often on compound crossbows than I do on recurve styles. But also, you then have the ability to have it be a lot slower, so much slower. This bow with these bolts is probably only going about 250 feet a second, which is plenty to whack the head off a turkey and break its neck. It's not an issue whatsoever. You do not need to be shooting a 400 feet per second crossbow to kill a deer too, but don't tell the crossbow hunters that. But you don't need that to kill a turkey either. So these guys right here, to try to give her as much as possible, this is a gold tip 22 Swift bolt, so it's a very light bolt. It's actually their 22 series target arrow, just neck down with a different cresting. So it's only like a 7.3 GPI, but there is a brass insert, 100 grain Magnus bullhead out front, and then I fletched them up with 4-inch right helical feathers. So the Magnus bullhead, as it comes out of the factory, the blades sit on the right side of the ferrule. So in my thinking anyway, it's going to naturally already want to take it to the right. So I took this 20-inch bolt or 22-inch bolt, whichever one it was, cut it down to 16 inches, installed the insert, 4-inch feathers on a right helical, and this thing is absolutely lasers out to 35 yards. Now, my daughter, I don't feel comfortable having her shoot that distance. I would really like to be 20 and in. And if we can get a bird to work the strutter decoy and hen or half strut jake or something like that, you know, comes in all nice and slow, puffed up, looking for a fight, I think she can definitely make that shot, no problem. But this package here, I don't even know how much it weighs, but man, it packs a punch. I will link down in the description below how to set these up. The Magnus bullhead, either the 100 or the 125. Derek Craig over at New Day Outdoors does a whole bunch of great videos for Magnus on how to set these up either with a compound or a crossbow. I literally followed that to a T, built my own bolts, and she is absolutely a slayer out to 20 yards. And realistically, if she felt comfortable making that shot, 35, this thing, if she holds center of the neck, is still hitting at the base of the neck. So not a whole lot of drop out of the bolt, plenty of power, plenty of sharp blades to definitely kill a turkey. So that's all for this video. If you're interested in getting your young one out into the turkey woods and not have to deal with a firearm, not have to deal with a shotgun, you can introduce them in a very quiet, lightweight, very less scary package for not a whole lot of money. Like I said, even with the bullheads, around 40 bucks and the couple of bolts, you're still looking at about under $300 to build this whole kit out, which just a regular crossbow off the shelf at your big box store, which is a compound version, which I see break every left, right, and center, is also around the $300 mark. So definitely worth a look if you're interested in getting your kid out. And if you do get a kid out, I hope you're able to enjoy the outside, enjoy turkey hunting if you so choose. Definitely enjoy God's beautiful creation. Get a young kid into hunting, and we'll get to see you next time.